and then I will cut. Okay, I will also start recording and then I will cut the rest.
Good. So, welcome back. We are course 4, class 8 on April 28th, 2024. And let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiates from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Think about how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We are learning that this is possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing, into an intention, and maybe even into a determination. And then turn your mind back to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know. what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kaumniryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. Now, from last class, we recall what's meant by the material cause of something being that which comes before, turns into the result, and in the process disappears. And to understand the importance of something's material cause and how that material cause has other factors that contribute to it doing what it does. When we have that clear in our mind, that any result must have a material cause and then has various contributing factors in order for the material cause to become its result. And really to work out those two pieces and the necessity of those two pieces for any result is the basis of these discussions about where does the mind come from, and is it something that disappears at the end of this lifetime. And the reason, well, I'll get back to that. So last class, we heard Kadrabjay's discussions about what things can't be the material cause of our mind. And tonight's class is going to be Master Dharmakirti's similar discussion. So Kadrabjay pointed out that we can know that our mind's cause, the mind of this life, cause can't be living physical matter. Because if it is coming from living physical matter, then it would have to, of course, depend on one or all five of those living physical matter tissues to be there in order for the mind to become the result. Well, the living tissue is there, but what if one or more of those living tissues fails, right? Or stops functioning, or wasn't there to begin with? That would mean that the mind could not come into being if one or more of those were the material cause for that mind. And it's like, so sorry, but babies are born blind. Babies are born deaf, or they're born intact, and then we go blind, deaf, or similar. And our mind doesn't disappear. So just by way of logic, we can show, no, the living tissue can't be the material cause. Second, how can we show ourselves that outside physical matter also cannot be the material cause for this mind, the mind of this life? Same argument. If they are, then anytime you have all four elements present, you should get mind. But my sofa has all four elements, and I don't think it has a mind. There are all kinds of things that are made of the four elements, and it doesn't become mind. If the four elements were the material cause, then that's what it would mean, right? To be the material cause means it's the stuff that's there first, similar to the mind, that flops over into the mind. It's like earth, air, fire, water. Come on. They're too different. And they're still there once you have mind. It just doesn't fit the criteria, which is why it's so important to establish the criteria for what qualifies as the material cause in order to go through these arguments. Fourth one was, how can we see that the material cause of the mind of this life can't be someone else's mind? Same arguments. Can the parents' minds be the material cause of the baby's mind? And it's like, we think, well, of course they are, right? They had to have minds that made the bodies come together, that brought the two cells together, that made the fetus that got the mind. Surely the mind comes from the parents too. If everything else about the baby comes from the parents, the mind must come from the parents as well. But does the mind of the parents qualify as the material cause, with the material causes three characteristics? They're there before, yes. They're similar. I say yes, they're similar. They're human consciousness. But do they disappear in the process of becoming? No. But the argument or the answer in your answer key was, no, they're too dissimilar. Is your mind like your parents' mind? No, I'm going to say yes. human mind. But the argument is, no, there are cases where a parent's mind and the child's mind are so wildly different. Still human, but very, very different, that if you can find one case where you can show that the parent's mind can't be the material cause of the child's mind, then that holds for everybody, because a material cause of a result holds true for every case in order to be a cause for a result. Which really, when we think about it, there's no actual causes for the results we think, because there's always some subtle difference between this one and that one. So you can't ever have 100% cause-result relationship, even in science, right? The best you're going to get is 99% repetition of an experimental result, and probably anything over 30% is useful, because 30% variation is just plain placebo, right? Which means the relationship you think that's going on is not. So, we just really are speaking theoretically here about cause-result relationships. And I don't know, is there anybody studying Arya Nagarjuna? Like, that's his big point. The cause-result relationship that we believe in as ignorant humans, none of those work like that, but not that they don't work at all. And that's where it gets kind of crazy. So the mind's cause, material cause, can't be the living tissue of that lifetime we've shown ourselves. It can't be outside physical tissue, not physical tissue, outside matter, which technically is what makes up the living tissue. And then it can't be the mind of another. What's left? So this is like proof by elimination. And we can't say, well, what's left is a previous moment of this mind. We can't say, well, it's not that either, because here's this mind, this moment. It had to have a cause, because this is the result right now. So you can't get to this last one and go, well, I can't prove that a previous moment of this mind is the cause of this mind now. But it's like, you can't disprove it, and that's all that's left. So if you have a mind now, then a previous moment of your own mind has to be the material cause for this mind, says Kedrubje. It's all that's left. So this class is Master Dharmakirti's similar discussion towards that group of believers called the Sharvakas, a group of Hindus in the 1300s. And they are saying Buddhas can't exist. This thing called Buddhahood can't actually happen, because you yourself say, Buddhists, that it takes 3 × 10⁻60 countless eons to develop your compassion big enough, the virtue of your compassion big enough to bring about the state of mind of omniscience and emanations, which it is to be a Buddha. And so it's not possible, because everybody knows the mind ends with this body. And so you don't have enough time to generate that big a compassion. You just can't do it in one lifetime. And their argument hinges on their belief that the mind comes into being when the egg and sperm come together and that baby is birthed out of the womb, that's when this mind starts. And they're saying the cause of the mind is the egg and sperm coming together. Something happens, right? And you've got life at that moment. And if it survives the 9 months and comes out whole, you've got a baby, right? That's got body and mind together. And as long as you've got that body and mind together, you've got life. And when it ends, it ends. And it's not unreasonable to think about, because it's a big belief in our society now. You know, that it's valuable to check our own heart, our own belief. And in the Buddhist tradition, they say, well, you know, to be a Buddhist is to believe in reincarnation. It's just like, that's what it is. It takes many lifetimes, and then you become a Buddha, and you go on, and you help everybody become one too. But can we prove it? No, we just believe it. We have the seeds to believe in past and future lifetimes, and so it makes sense to us. But we could say, either for those of us that became Buddhists, right, we're versus being born into it, there was something about our birth religion that we rejected. There were beliefs that we were brought up with, and then we said, nah, that's not helping me. And we went looking for something else, and we found something else. And it's like, oh, yeah, this one makes sense. But probably it just made sense from seeds in our heart, not because we really thought it through. And so, as the Nipas, the definitioners, we want to prove to ourselves the truth of past and future lifetimes, not just rely upon the seeds of belief, because we could run out of those. We could still run out of those even when we apply logic. But when we run out of seeds of belief, we fall back on our logic. And it will help keep us in the fold if that's what we want. Then Geshe-la shared that these arguments about the proof of past and future lives actually don't come up in the monastic training until just a year or so before you sit for your Geshe exam. So it seems so interesting that we get it so early in our training, but in the traditional training, it doesn't come up because everybody already believes. Do you see? There's no need to bring it up. So in a way, it's like, thank you, Geshe-la, for seeing that we need both to learn how to think logically and to use this particular subject matter to wrap our minds around, what do we think our mind is? What do we think our body is? What do we think our life is? What do we think we are? Like, when you try to find yourself in amongst your heaps and your mind and your everyday life, it's so obvious. But when you go to try and find it, it's like so confusing. Okay. So Master Dharmakirti gives these opening statements. These 4 lines is the premise that we're going to be talking about. So for the seeds of keeping Tibetan alive in our world, please read Kewa Yongsu Lempa Na Changchub Wangpo Lodak Ni Rangi Rikla Tume Chen Luni Bashik Leke Min. All right. Kewa Yongsu Lempa Na. Kewa means, Kewa Yongsu, put those together, means when a person takes birth. Actually, that's what all of it means. Kewa Yongsu Lempa. When a person takes birth. Now here meaning birth coming out of the womb. Conception is at the moment the egg and sperm touch. So technically, rebirth happens at that moment because that's the moment that lifetime begins. But we're talking now about when that soon-to-be infant exits the womb. Kewa Yongsu Lempana. When that being gets born. Jumnub Wangpo Lodak. Ni means they're there. So these are 3 things that infant already has. 3 characteristics, 3 qualities. Jumnub means breath passing. It means they're breathing. It's actually the word for in and out, Jungnub. So when that infant exits the womb, they already have breathing. Breathing is happening. Wangpo is the word for those living tissue sense powers. The optic nerve, the retina, the optic nerve, the auditory canal and its auditory nerve, all of that. Living physical tissue, but it's called the sense powers. And Lodak, they have a mind that's responding, right? The mind responds. That's what it does. So the instant this infant is out and alive, they have breathing, they have living tissue, sense powers, and they have a functioning mind. They are reacting to their environment, so we know they have a functioning mind. So he uses those 3 characteristics of a brand newborn to talk about the material cause for those 3, to come to some conclusion about what's the material cause for the mind, but also what's the material cause for all 3 of those. Are they 3 separate material causes? Is there like a overall material cause for the life of that baby with these different material causes for these 3 different characteristics? We're going to see. So he's basically saying when a child is born, it already has these 3 qualities, these 3 characteristics: breathing, sense powers, living physical tissue sense powers, and mind. And we know the mind by way of seeing it react, right? It cries, it moves. All right. Rangi Rikla Tume Chen. This means these 3 things are not things which do not depend upon something of a similar type. That's what that phrase means. These three, breathing, living tissue, and mind, are not things which do not depend upon something of a similar type. Where's Luni? There it is. Luni bashikle kemen is another statement in the negative. Those three do not come only from the mind, body itself, Luni bashik. They do not only come from the body. He's making this statement because he's talking to this group of people who believe that the child's mind does come from the body. It does come from things that are not similar. And they're convinced that that's correct, that that's true. So he's saying to them, no, those things can't come from something not similar. And no, they can't come from just the body itself. So it is important to have those negatives in there. And then, my experience in this tradition is anytime they have a chance to state something positive by way of a negative statement, they do it. Right? Some secret hidden reason for working out a truth by way of a negative. So it's not pointed out in this class, but I just thought to point it out because you guys are sophisticated Dharma people. So Master Dharmakirti is going to give us 10 different, like a sequence of 10 arguments. Really, they are responses to this group of people that you know what they believe. And each argument is addressing another angle through which the audience isn't believing what he's saying. But remember the thing about logical statements. Each part of your logical statement needs to stay within the belief system of the person you're addressing. And Geshe Michael didn't go into that so much with this class, but when you're chewing on these arguments, it's a way to look at whether or not we can accept the argument as a correct statement based on whether or not it's still within the belief system of the other person, the one who believes that the mind comes from the body. Okay, so again, for vocabulary, we're looking first at the 4 elements, that the belief that the mind comes from the body hinges on the understanding that the body is made of some combination of those 4 elements that we spoke about before. But here's the more complete names of those 4 elements, because the name of the element hinges on what it is, like how it's defined, how we recognize it. So wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. So these are earth, water, fire, and air. But let me get back to it. I've gotten ahead of myself. So Master Dharmakirti has said to this group of folks, consider these 3, breathing, living tissue, and mind, they did not come from something not similar, because the baby having them now means those three had to have had material causes. The baby having them now, breathing, has to be a result that has a material cause and contributing factors. So there had to be some kind of something similar that became the baby's breathing, and in the process went away. The living tissue, the sense powers, having them now means they're the results of some material cause plus other conditions. The material cause having had to be there before, be similar, and in the process of becoming the result goes away. And the mind, to have the mind now, which we know the baby does because it's reacting to its environment, that mind had to have a material cause that was something that was there before, is similar, and flops over into the result, and the process goes away. He's talking to people that don't believe that that happens, but who still will say, yes, you have a cause. The baby has a cause. Baby has cause and contributing factors. And Master Dharmakirti is saying, well, let's figure out what those are, shall we? So he'll say, he's saying to this group, he says, so what do you think are the material causes of that infant's breathing, living tissue, and mind? And they're going to say the four elements. That some combination of the four elements coming together is what makes all existence. That doesn't sound so far-fetched, right? Science says that. Take that chart of all the chemicals, you combine those in multiple ways, and you've got Einstein to Nat, right? To Hell Being and Hungry Ghost, if you believe in that. So what are these four elements? Sa Shing Tepa means solid and rigid. That which is solid and rigid is what we mean by earth element. It's the quality of form, of hardness, firmness. So for instance, a wall has more earth element than a carpet because a wall stands upright. A carpet has flexibility. You stand it up and let go. Chulen Xing Sherwa is water, wet and flowing. Len Xing Sherwa means wet and flowing. So when we say water, we tend to think, oh, that clear H2O. But the quality of water is in blood and saliva and the xylem and phloem, that goes up and down the tree trunk. It's not water because it's got other stuff in it, but the fluidity factor in anything. So in the comparison of the wall to the carpet, we don't think of the carpet as having any fluidity to it at all. But it's got more fluidity than the wall, because when you hold it up like this and let go, down it goes. That's because it's got fluidity to it, right? It bends. It can't hold itself up the way something with more earth has. Fire, me, sashing sekpa, sashing sekpa. Fire is that which is hot and burning. Burning meaning like consuming. And so, we say we all know what fire is, but any kind of metabolism is fire element. Any kind of temperature is fire element. And then lung yang xing yowa is air, which is light as in light versus heavy, not light versus dark, but light and moving. So air element is the element that moves, that lets things move. So again, the carpet has more air element than the wall because the carpet is movable. More so than a wall is movable. So when we say air element, we don't just mean the air that we breathe. Every existing material thing has some combination of solidity, fluidity, temperature, and movability. And all four of these elements have some kind of tangibility, meaning tactileness. They can be felt, right? Even the air element is tactile. And the mind, that which is clear and aware, I don't think I wrote that down, has no tactile ability, none whatsoever. So can these four elements, even the air element, be similar enough to mind to serve as the material cause, that which is there before? That could be. Are they similar enough to be the material cause of mind? If they're touchable and the mind is not touchable, if we believe that, then we would have to come to the conclusion is, oh my gosh, I guess those four elements can't be the material cause of the mind. Can they be contributing factors? Sure, if you say that in order to know that the being has a mind, you see the little body move, right? And you hear it cry or smile or whatever, that in order to establish that there's a mind there, we rely on the four elements. But they're not cause and effect. They're not cause and result. They're not material cause because they're too dissimilar. All right, that's all of our Tibetan for class 8, but I have a lot more class 8 to do. Okay. So that was his second argument. His third, he says, consider these three: breathing, living tissue, and the mind. They did not come from the elements alone because the elements are not a living being. So his previous argument is that they are not similar enough to the mind. Now he says their elements are not living things. how can you combine any combination of non-living things in any kind of a way that would all of a sudden make life out of not life? You know, science can't come up with the answer to that one either. They hook you up to the EEG and show that you have brain function, and they say, see, they're still alive. But how do squiggles on a page prove awareness? Unless you already believe that squiggles on a page mean awareness. It's funny logic, says a logician. But if you argue with it, that seems peculiar, because you're arguing that there's a mind still in there being proven by an EEG. What, do you think the mind's not in there at all? Where is it? And if it's not inside the body, if it's outside the body, then why is it related to the body at all? I mean, those are good questions that the scientists have. It has to be inside that body. And that's why we can measure it with an EEG. They prove their own misperception to themselves. And it's like, I go along with that. But it really isn't accurate logic. Now, Geshe always says, someday in deep meditation, you will experience directly what are not the material cause of mind and what is material cause of mind. And then you don't need any of this. Like, once you've proven the truth of past and future lives to yourself, you don't need logic anymore. You have direct proof. But that doesn't mean anybody that you're talking to is going to believe you just because you said, I experienced it, right? How many people have near-death experiences or something similar? And it's like, I know this mind goes on. It's like, yeah, great for you. So we still want to get good at being able to help someone think something through if they're willing, right? You can't make anybody do it. All right, so number 3, those 3 did not come from the elements alone, because the elements are not living beings. Rocks and chemicals can't give rise to consciousness, no matter how much we want it, right? Your sofa is never gonna have a mind. But your baby's always gonna have a mind. What's the difference in those elements if the baby's 4 elements get mind and the sofa's 4 elements don't? Number 4, he says, consider the mind. Right, so now he's zeroing in on the mind, which is really what he wants to talk about because his audience is saying, you got one life to live, you might as well do the best you can. And he's saying, no, actually, your mind is beginningless and endless. You have lots of lifetimes, and so you better use it wisely. Like, it's kind of a funny conclusion. Well, if I've got all the time in the world, I might as well just live it up, this one. And it's like, ooh, wrong conclusion. So he wants to zero in on the cause of the mind, the material cause of the mind, because that's more important to the point he's trying to get across, which is this mind goes on. The physical body will end. That is true. But the mind does not. Not my mind, the mind of Sarahni will end. The personality, the ego mind of Sarahni will end. But the moment by moment consciousness, awareness is going to go, 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 go. And that's what he's trying to show us beyond a shadow of a doubt, so that we can rely upon and relate to that, right? Constantly changing, never non-existent quality of being. I use those terms, not from scripture. So consider the mind. It is not something which does not cross into the next life because of the mind's ability to continue itself. So follow it again. Consider the mind. It is not something which does not cross over into the next life. He states it that way because he's talking to people who believe that it is something that does not cross over into another life. It's not something which does not cross over into the next life because of the mind's ability to continue itself. So I have to assume that Master Dharmakirti knows that his audience does believe that the mind has the ability to continue itself. I'm not sure if we talk to, our neurologists and we ask them, does the mind have the ability to continue itself? I'm not sure that they would say yes. I'm thinking back in my previous lifetime, as a medical practitioner. And if somebody had said, does the mind have the ability to continue itself? I think I would have said no. That it relies upon the brain. And that as long as the brain is functioning, the mind's continuing, but the mind's not continuing itself. The brain's making it happen. And yet, so to me, that would make this argument unacceptable, not correct logic. So when you're cooking this one, kind of chew on that. How might someone who believes the mind ends with the body still hold to how the mind somehow continues itself within the framework of that physical body's physical life? It has some kind of mind moment, mind moment, mind moment. It would require having some awareness of awareness, right? Being aware of how our awareness changes, which, if I weren't a meditator, I would never have paid attention to that, even though it's our constant experience. It was so ubiquitous, right, as experience, that it was never like, wow, my mind is changing. It was just me, and that was life. So I think it has something to do with, somebody who at least is interested enough in these things to look and say, well, what is this thing, mind, and what does it do all day, and what's it like? Because it's a doorway in for Master Dharmakirti in the folks who say the mind relies entirely on the body. Do you see? Because if it relies entirely on the body, then the mind does not continue itself. And if they say, yeah, it does, as long as it's got a body, it'll continue itself. Those are inconsistent, right? Logically inconsistent. So his explanation, though, is if the mind has been moving from one moment to the next, to the next, to the next, for your whole lifetime, from the instant out of the womb until you're 97 and a half years old, why would the mind's ability to move moment by moment by moment by moment all of a sudden stop? That's illogical. To think of something that has that kind of momentum would just, right? All of a sudden the principles change. All of a sudden the process change. As all of a sudden, I don't know, you can say the same for the body, except that the body doesn't roll along and then screech to a halt, right? It takes at least 4 minutes for it to screech to a halt, right? And probably longer. Why is the mind any different? I don't find that so convincing, personally. I like the argument that a material cause has to be there before, be similar, and go away in the process of becoming the result. And that fits mind. We have a moment of mind, this instant. The moment of mind that it's going to create will be similar. And in the process of the one coming newly into being, the old one has to go away. So that's the case that they make for the moment of mind, the moment before, flopping over to this one now. And then this one, well, you can't say this one now, because now it becomes the one the moment before for this one now. So it's always this cycle of the one before flops over and goes away, because the one from before is gone, isn't it? And then there, and once we get a hold of that process, what could possibly stop it? Because your moment of now awareness instantly becomes the one the moment before that can flop over. Okay. He goes on. So consider the elements. They are not the cause of those three, because there should never be a case where the elements would fail to give those three. If the combination of the elements is the material cause for breathing, living tissue, and mind, then every time you have those elements together, you should get breathing, living tissue, and mind. And we already said, doesn't happen with a sofa. And it's like, come on, we're talking about living people. Well, it can happen that an infant can be stillborn, in which case you had those elements together while it was in the womb. And then something happens, between here and there that doesn't anymore have life. There had to have been some other factor, not just the 4 elements, because there it was, alive in the womb, and here it is, unfortunately not, outside of the womb. Something else has to be going on. All of a sudden, you don't have the material cause that you had before? Or did you not have the material cause? Let's take a break. I've got 2 more, no, 1 more. Only 1 more argument to give you. Maybe let's not take a break. Let's not take a break. Let me give you the 1 more argument. Consider the 4 elements They are not the cause of the three: breathing, living tissue, mind. Because multiple elements would cause multiple people. That one's, I don't know, I don't find that one so helpful either, because it seems so absurd. But if we're saying it takes all four elements together to make a living being, and then he says, well, look, but that doesn't happen for your sofa. Why does it happen for your baby? Then they say, oh, well, it's just one. You just have to have one complete. And he says, well, if all you need is one and you have all four, then each one of the four should make a whole being. And so every baby should be quadruplets. And that doesn't happen. Right? It's like the Mr. Kachika's going, yeah, but. And he goes, no, that can't work either. If the elements are the material cause of the body and mind of this life, then anytime they all come together, poof, there should be a living being there, and the elements should disappear. Because that's what material, bless you, causes do. Those elements are contributing factors, important contributing factors, clearly. But just because we have the contributing factors all there doesn't make us have the material cause there. Remember the oak tree acorn that we don't have, but we have sunlight, earth, water, farmers. Still don't get an oak tree. All the contributing factors, but no material cause. No oak tree. Same for life. Some material cause is necessary, and everything else is contributing factors. That's all that Geshe covered in class 8 for this course, because the first half of class, he was addressing the students there who were arguing with him about Khedrubje's arguments about what's the material cause of mind, right? Not really getting to new ideas, but like arguing with Geshe. And so it took up half the class. And so all we really get is this other half that picks up in class 9 and carries on more, really wrapping it all together in our class 9. But it is actually 2 separate homeworks and quizzes. So I'm gonna let us go early, right? We're a whole hour early. I get that hour. I'm putting it in the bank. Yeah, but don't disrespect class 8. Chew on these arguments and like put a part of you into that frame of mind that says, no, the mind comes from the body. The mind comes from the brain. And convince yourself that the mind is something about the brain, and see if you can work it out that is just not possible, and be consistent with life's experience. And I don't remember whether it was this group I shared with or the other group. But, you know, there's so much writing about people who have near-death experiences and come back and say what they experienced. And those are all, many of them are beautiful. We don't tend to hear about the ones that are not beautiful, and those happen too. But one in particular happened to a physician whose experience, near-death experience, happened while he was hooked up to an EEG. Was it this group I told this already? Yes, no, yes, no. Okay, so wait, Claire didn't get to hear it, so you all get to hear it again. So this, I think it was a neurologist. He gets meningitis so bad that he goes comatose, and they put him on life support, including an EEG, which shows his brain is flatline, which means he's dead. But his family won't disconnect him. And after some period of time, I don't recall how long, he wakes up, right? His little brain function starts again. And he says, wow, I had the coolest experience. And he describes meeting all these people and learning all this amazing stuff. And they showed him the readout of his brain while he was having that experience. Do you see? That's what's so extraordinary about his experience, is he was hooked up, and it showed that his brain was not functioning, and he was having full-on sensory experiences. And so there was no convincing him after that that experience was not as real, or more so, that anything he had ever experienced through his brain function, because he came to see how limited we are in experiencing our world through our brain function. There's so much more to reality than that. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So, you know, of all the near-death experiences, that's a great one to show ourselves that, in fact, the mind is not limited by or driven by or caused by the brain. Epstein, I think, was his name. His books are beautiful. So check it out. Check it out for yourself. And follow these arguments and see if you can come to a deeper aha about your belief in your relationship between you and your body and you and your mind. Because that's where it's going to go eventually, is, okay, I'm more clear about what my body is and where it's coming from. I'm more clear about my mind and where it's coming from. What the heck is this me thing? And where is it? Right, so that's not part of this class, but you can't help but go there when you're investigating this stuff. All right, so let's do our dedication, and then if anybody wants to stay and do Q&A, we can do that. Otherwise, you can all go early and give me credit. So remember that person that we wanted to be able to help? We have learned stuff that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's an extraordinary good news. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy being. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. That love, that compassion, that wisdom. It feels so good. We want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it. By the power of the goodness that we've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom may. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with wisdom, filled with loving kindness. And may it be so. Okie doke. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. Stop the recording. Yes.